Saturday, July 6th. We spent the rest of the night at our favorite after-hours location, Denver International Airport. DIA was a newly constructed airport located northeast of Denver and about an hour from Millers. It was a perfect location to explore while drunk, tripping on a hallucinogen, or in our case, high on powder. For starters, the drive was a real time killer. Instead of being parked in a dirt lot, we were driving to a destination, something to get excited about. Additional benefits were that it was open 24/7, 365, and an adult ID was not required for admission. At 2:30 in the morning, the lobby was virtually a ghost town, except for the occasional janitor operating a floor buffer. We had complete run of the place, jumping from passenger train to passenger train, concourse to concourse. A few years before this, Jake's older brother was working for an airline that gave him an all-access pass. He snuck Jake, myself, and a few other guys into the airport to give us a tour of DIA a few weeks before it opened to the public. We all dropped a few hits of acid on the drive there and ended up driving a luggage cart down a newly paved runway at 3 in the morning. This trip to DIA was not as eventful, and after a few hours, we got bored and left. Jake dropped everyone off one by one until we were the last two remaining in the car. The conversation and laughter shifted into total silence. At 5:05 a.m., I finally arrived home. Well, my parents' home. "Thanks, man. I'll talk to you later," I said to Jake, who started to drive off before I could shut the passenger door. As I stumbled up the driveway, I glanced left to the sunrise breaking on the eastern horizon. It had been a long night, and was going to be a longer day. I was scheduled to work in less than an hour. It wasn't the first time I pulled an all-nighter, but normally, I was coming off an acid trip and still seeing visuals dancing around in my head. Luckily, Mark gave me a couple lines of crystal to do on my lunch break as a midday pick-me-up. The moment I walked into my bedroom, I decided to snort a line, because there was no sense lying on my bed and waiting for the buzz of my alarm clock. Sleep was completely out of the question. I began searching for the proper tools to snort the meth while simultaneously dressing for work. I worked as a courtesy clerk at a regional grocery store. My responsibilities were sacking groceries, collecting shopping carts, sweeping the floors, and any unpleasant tasks that no other employee wanted to do. A few months after I started, I had to clean a bathroom stall that had projectile shit all over the walls and floor. Minimum wage was $4.25 an hour, but I made $4.63. After taxes, a 40-hour week netted me around $160. It doesn't seem like much, but I was still living at home, with no rent, no car payment, no insurance, and no other bills of any substance. I put a large portion of each paycheck into savings, and even at that minuscule wage, I was able to accumulate a couple $1,000s after a few years. Any cash that I didn't put into savings went to three things: alcohol, drugs, and music. Although I was saving money, I had no idea why. I had no plans for college or any life after high school. I don't ever recall having a conversation with my parents about my future career ambitions. I considered attending college during my senior year of high school, so I took the ACT. I scored a 19 without studying for it, on zero sleep, and dropping a hit of acid 14 hours before I picked up the pencil for the test. I didn't blame my parents, though. Neither of them went to college. I think their highest aspirations for me were that I would work my way up the grocery store career ladder, get married, have a couple kids, retire as a deli manager after 40 years, and call it a life. My parents both grew up in towns that were gas station stops off Interstate 94 in western North Dakota. My dad was born and raised in a podunk town that had a population of around 10,000 people. He was the fourth oldest of 12 children. My mom grew up in an even smaller podunk town that peaked with a population of around 800. She was the youngest child of 6. They got married in the summer of 1971 and had my brother Jim the following summer. My dad worked as a meat cutter at the local grocery, and my mother watched Jim during the days and worked as a waitress at night. A few months before I was born, in the summer of 1976, they packed up a trailer and headed west to Portland, Oregon. I was raised in a small 2-bedroom apartment where my brother and I shared a bedroom and slept in a wooden bunk bed my parents purchased from a secondhand thrift store. Jim had the top bunk, and I envisioned it collapsing onto me every night when I closed my eyes. My dad continued working as a meat cutter, and my parents doubled as leasing agents at our rundown apartment complex to receive a discount on our monthly rent. My weekly highlight was our Friday night family dinners at McDonald's or Kentucky Fried Chicken. In the winter of 1988, my dad received a job offer at a brand new grocery store in Denver, Colorado. After a lengthy family discussion, my parents concluded the family would be moving east. Within a few weeks, we had our moving day confirmed. I said my goodbyes to my elementary school friends. We packed up every possession into a 20-foot U-Haul truck, and we cut our ties with the West Coast. We drove the 1,200 miles in 2 days and arrived in Denver in January of 1988. My parents purchased a small 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in the town of Morrison, another suburb of southwest Denver. For the first time, I had my own room, as well as a garage and fenced yard with a patio. The mortgage required my parents to have additional income, and that required my mother to get a full-time job as a housekeeper for a major hotel chain. We lived paycheck to paycheck and had very little extra money for added amenities or family vacations. My parents did their best to give my brother and me a lower-middle-class upbringing. Jim graduated high school 2 years after we moved to Colorado and enlisted in the Army the following year. He got shipped off to Fort Campbell in Kentucky in December of 1990, a few months after the start of the Gulf War. With my brother on the other side of the country and both my parents working 40 to 50 hours a week, I basically became a latchkey kid. I had no curfew or real parental supervision, coming and going as I pleased as long as I left a note. The first time I got drunk, I was 14, and I smoked marijuana a few months later. I arrived to work a few minutes before 6 a.m. I clocked in, fastened my red apron, pinned on my name tag, and walked to the closest register to bag up various items for the early morning shoppers. Saturdays were normally the busiest days, and that, combined with snorting a line every 2 hours, made work fly by. Before I knew it, my shift was over. After I clocked out, I walked to the pharmacy. I was tired, but I knew there was no possibility of sleep without pharmaceutical assistance. I located the sleeping pill section and slipped a box of Unisom into the pocket of my apron. My philosophy was, if it could fit into the pockets of my apron, it was free. I walked back, past the line of registers, to the main entrance, and the freedom of the outside world. Luckily, my parents lived less than 10 minutes from the store, because I was starting to crash from being awake for over 35 hours. When I got home, I walked straight into my basement bedroom, sat down on the edge of my bed, opened up the box of Unisom, and removed 4 pills. I then picked up a half-empty bottle of Jim Beam that I had stashed next to my nightstand. I popped the pills into my mouth and chased them with a few shots of whiskey, deciding to swallow 1 additional pill to ensure I was going to be completely comatose. I placed disc 1 of Pink Floyd's The Wall into my 5-disc CD changer, fluffed my pillows, and rested my head on top of them. My breathing subdued, and I began to drift in and out of consciousness.